much ado, let me declare the meeting open. Those are the items, essentially briefing. I think it's going to be done by the Chief of Joint Operations, 3 of them, one after the other. I think you would prefer to have one presentation for all 3. If the presentation is the same as we have received it. So we'll allow that, we'll grant that. That in the end, we'll then interact, at the end of the presentation, we'll then interact with the presentation. I will let the SANDF introduce the issues, ask the Chief Joint Operations to do the presentation. The DM may want to come in immediately after that, before we deliberate, or after our deliberations. But the DM will make a call at what time he thinks it is relevant to come, whether immediately after the presentation or after the answer and question session. That's after the deliberation. So we'll leave it at that for now. Can we note apologies? Are there any apologies?
From the member side, I don't have any apologies. I only have one apology from the minister, who is still abroad, Chair. Thank you.
Still abroad. Okay. No, that one is accepted. Thank you very much. I'm not too sure if there are any apologies on the part of the department. SANDF is in the meeting. Good evening, SANDF.
Good evening, Chairperson. I don't have any apologies from my side. As you correctly pointed out, we are here with Chief Joint Ops that will be actually doing the presentations. And as you correctly pointed out, the 3 presentations have been condensed into one because the matters are interrelated. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. You may then make your remarks, SANDF, and then invite the Chief to take us through.
Thank you very much. Through you, Deputy Minister, I would like to invite General Sangweni, who will then do the presentation on the areas, and the presentations are going to cover our successes and challenges in discharge of our work that relates to borderline management, how we also cooperate with the Border Management Authority in discharging these responsibilities. We are all aware that it's not the work that is assigned to the Department of Defense only. And then the other part is also what it is that we are doing in terms of the capacity that we have, the technologies that we are using, and where we are at in terms of the implementation also of the agreement that we have signed with our colleagues from Home Affairs, which is then the PMA. And without further ado, Chair, if you'd allow me, I would call upon Lieutenant General Piwe Sangweni to take us through these 3 presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, SANDF General.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening to the Deputy Minister, as well as the Secretary of Defense. Thank you, SANDF, that we have clarified that the approach of these 3 points that are required to serve at the Joint Standing Committee. We took the approach of combining them in one presentation because they are all interrelated. And I think it will assist to maybe the comprehensive picture and or save time. Chair, the scope, if it can be lighted, that I'm going to cover with the presentation. Yes, the scope, basically the background concept and objectives, and a bit of orientation in terms of area of operations, and the initiatives and optimization, as well as government contribution. That is the part which speaks to the first point of update on current operations. And then the second point of technology is covered under, as you can see, in bold, technology usage, as well as the third point on border management is also in bold, and then successes are part of the first point. Next. Here, Chair and members of the committee, it's just confirmation as a background in respect of the SANDF members, or SANDF mandate to defend the territorial integrity of the country, as well as on bullet number 3, confirming and or bringing to our attention as a confirmation that the area of operations is the area running parallel to the border line and extending 10 kilometers inland. Visual from the fence inside South Africa, 10 kilometers, but running parallel all along the border line. But it is important for me that I bring to attention that with this area of operations, there is what we have as the SANDF, and in operations classified it as an extended land and air area of operations. The extended area of operations includes the border towns, the border areas where you've got towns, villages, which are in close vicinity of the borderline or start from the borderline, but they stretch way beyond the 10-kilometer zone. And others, they do not even start from the borderline. You'll find a town 15, 20 kilometers away from the borderline. You'll find communities in those areas. Because these areas, they have an influence or have an effect and or affected by the illegal cross-border movement and criminality, we then took a decision or an approach that we have also to include them and make it an extended area of operations. Legally, that's why I started from the saying area of operations is determined, it says 10 kilometers inland, but we do surpass that and consider it as an extended area of operations. Chair and members of the committee, if we leave that one out, we'll be doing lip service to border safeguarding, because like I indicated, the people who've crossed illegally, they go to that next town. Those who want to cross from South Africa outside, they'll go into the nearest town and plan from there and move from there, and the taxis and they drop them there and all of that, as well as a basic criminality. It will flourish outside of the 10-kilometer zone. For vehicles, basically, that gets stolen. They have hideouts in those areas. They are, how can I put it, households which they are used to hide these vehicles when they are preparing them to cross the borderline. So we felt that it is important for us to make it comprehensive, and we go as far as that in terms of deploying. Next. Then the concept I'm just bringing to the members of the committee, confirming that in our concept, we are permanently deployed 365 days of the year and 24 hours of the day. Meaning it's a continuous day and night deployment. And also confirming that border safeguarding speaks to land, air, and maritime domains, as well as cyberspace, which is something that is recently been brought in terms of cyberspace. Way before 2010, when it was still called border control, it was only the land borders that were classified as part of border control. But then later on, it was developed in terms of border safeguarding. It covers land, air, and maritime domains. Then bullet number 3, just confirming as part of our concept that we plan for and are guided by, is that our responsibility is protecting the borderline, which is outside of the port of entry, or outside of the border post, or outside of the border gate, inclusive of the maritime territorial waters now at sea. It's important that it gets known and it remains entrenched that our work does not go at all inside the port of entry or the border post or the border gate. It's exclusive. We are outside of that. Our concept also speaks to the SANDF elements deployed on the borderline, working very hard with commitment, dedication, and zeal to achieve the set objectives, despite the serious capacity challenges that the DoD is faced with. We brought this into the concept over time when the issue of capacity and capability challenges mushroomed, and we had to really direct all commanders that go the extra mile. It must be hard work, we must be committed, and we must be dedicated to achieve the set objectives, despite previously, when there was liberty of capabilities, that will not necessarily be part of the concept, which forces you to plan for it. It was just part of normal, but we felt now, when we look at the plans of the commanders on the ground, we must see where they are motivating or pushing the soldiers to work much more harder and be committed and dedicated, other than just assuming that work will flourish. Next. The objectives. Then I have to speak to the objectives. The main set objectives in Operation Corona is to prevent the illegal cross-border movement of persons, contraband, livestock, weapons across our international borderline. 2 is to apprehend. 3 is to create a deterrence. Very focused objectives: prevent, apprehend, create a deterrence. We sometimes some people will want to measure our successes by the number of arrests that we've made and what we have confiscated, but the primary role is to prevent. We will plan our activities and patrols that it must prevent a person from attempting. So if we do not have successes that are visible in terms of the amounts, it should not be seen as nothing is being done. There is prevention, which is primary. And then secondly, if and when someone or a person or an individual causes himself or herself and breach the law, which says anyone who crosses in any other area, crosses the international borderline in any other area other than the designated and official port of entry is conducting crime. So when they try, then we apprehend them. Apprehension, detain, and then hand over to the police immediately at the earliest possible times. Then the police will do their work. That's what we call to apprehend. And also create a deterrence. The deterrence much more in the form of a possible threat of foreign aggression. When we have a footprint of soldiers on the borderline, any other adversary or other country who might think they know that there is a footprint, that becomes our first line of defense. Those are the three objectives: prevent, apprehend, and create a deterrence. Next slide. This is the area of operations, which many of the members of the committee are fully aware of it. Just confirming, 15 subunits deployed, starting in the north, in Limpopo, Battalion HQ, which is stationed in Mosena, where we deploy 4 subunits, 4 companies. And then going to Mpumalanga in the east, the Battalion headquarters in Macadamia, where we deploy 3 companies in that area of operations. And then going down south, southeast, KZN, we've got the Battalion headquarters in Pongola, where we are deploying 3 companies in that area of operations. And then in the Eastern Cape, we deploy 1 company with the headquarters at Maluti, base in Matatiele. And then going inland and the Free State, we deploy Battalion headquarters, which is at Lady Brand, with 2 times subunits or companies. What's important there underlined is that in Free State, the 2 subunits include horses and includes motorbikes, which we call specialized infantry units. And then going to the west, in Northern Cape, then we've got 1 company deployed with the headquarters at Louisville. And then in the northwest, we've got 1 company deployed with the command headquarters in Khopane near Zerast. Next. Then when I try to interpret the requirement from the committee that I must present, or the SANDF must present the current border operations, I felt then, well, many of you are fair of this border safeguarding operations. I then felt that it will be prudent that I include this, like you say, developments and future plans. There's a current situation which I've presented, but then there's what is it in the future. We are saying our plans and developments going forward must be understood that the increase of force levels or subunits is highly unlikely in the short term, especially in the land borderline deployment. It's very important that that gets factored in. As we see it in the short term, highly unlikely to have additional force levels in this area, land borderline. And in the maritime domain, we are pleased to present that in the future, in the maritime domain, we feel and we see that the performance will be highly improved. We'll be able to dominate the territorial waters due to the fact of being able to acquire 3 new vessels, inshore multi-mission PVs, patrol vessels. The first IMPV, SAS King Sekhukhune, the first, will be operationally deployed by early 2023. The committee has seen the handover of that vessel and currently busy with the operational testing OTE. I believe early next year it will be fully tested and confirmed, and it will be able to deploy and patrol our waters. Hopefully the other two will quickly be finalized and join, and we will be able to dominate territorial waters. However, in terms of our foresight, the three are not adequate. The Western Coast will still struggle a bit. If we only have three, we'll need another three. Why? Because if one is deployed, the other one will be preparing, the other one will be in rest and doing maintenance and repairs. So the three will most probably be able to be effective on the East Coast only. And that if we acquire another three, it will elongate the availability of those three platforms. And if we only have the three that we have now, we will utilize them over and over, and we'll end up grounding them to a halt. It's important for me to express this so that the committee will support our endeavors and our wish that we get another three vessels. We are also saying in terms of developments and going to the future, work is underway to bring in technology in the form of sensors and radars as a force multiplier in the medium term. Next. Well, with our concept and with the objectives, but being faced with capability shortcomings, we took the approach of saying we must optimize on what we have. We must optimize in our effort. So going forward, we feel that optimization must be central in what we do in the form of maintaining and improving the existing coordination, collaboration, and cooperation with other government departments, role players, and stakeholders in that area. For instance, the SAPS, the BMA, the Department of Forestry and Fisheries. Also, we must maintain and improve coordination, collaboration, and cooperation with the local leadership, community forums, business leaders, as well as identified private security companies. Important, they've underlined this one, identified private security companies, not anyone who sees and have an initiative that he can then be involved in border safeguarding, or he's at liberty to be patrolling the borderline. We will collaborate, coordinate, and cooperate with those which are identified. The committee is quite well aware that last year, 2021, you called a meeting where we had to present what, in terms of our collaboration and cooperation with other private companies, where central to that were the tracker, vehicle tracking companies. And they presented, and we presented, and we confirmed that we do cooperate with them, we work with them, and there's quite a lot of success out of that partnership. So those which we say are identified and confirmed, not those who come as offside. And thirdly, we'll also continue maintaining and improving cooperation, coordination, and collaborate with our counterparts across the borderline in the form of meetings, sharing of information, and conducting joint or combined operations. Next slide. Again, we are saying optimization based on making ends meet with what we have. We are saying work is underway to increase the deployment and utilization of technology through acquiring of new technology systems. Again, optimizing on what we have currently. Furthermore, it is the application of innovations which are intended to dominate the area of operations. Dominating the area of operations is a key principle in military terms, where you are deployed or faced with an adversary. One primary objective is to dominate the area, whether by sight, whether by footprint, or whether by firepower, and which then must give you an advantage over the adversary. So we are taking the approach of coming up with innovative ideas to dominate the area of operations, even though with less capabilities or having challenges with inadequate capabilities. Furthermore, in terms of optimization, we're saying we have to improve, we are going to improve the conditions of the ops-based facilities, including the forward operating bases and temporary bases. This speaks to ensuring that the soldiers, where they are deployed day and night, 365 days a year in the field, the conditions are at least acceptable, other than the current state of our base facilities is really not up to standard. And when they are not up to standard, they affect the morale of the soldiers. Then soldiers are then having to be faced with patching up here and there instead of waking up and or during the night doing their work. So it is important as part of optimization. When the soldiers have morale is up to standard, they'll work much more, they'll be able to stretch themselves much more. If not, then we will remain at a level where the soldier will have to be pushed. In terms of optimization, we are also saying we have to engage such that there's increased effort and contribution by government towards improving the condition of the borderline infrastructure. This one we rely on government, which speaks to other government departments. We are also a government department, but other government departments who can have a role to play in the border safeguarding and borderline control to really contribute highly and strongly in terms of improving the conditions of the infrastructure on the borderline. Here we are speaking about proper and suitable fence. We speak about patrol roads. We speak about where there are forests, where in terms of DFFE, it is conducive for us to be able still to patrol in those areas. Again, why I'm calling it is under the approach of optimization. Immediately the fence can be at a standard, the fence that demarcates the two countries. If it can be of standard and cannot be broken easily, it cannot be cut easily, then it will really provide us with much more successes. But currently, it is a negative factor. So it is part of optimization, government, and this we also rely on the committee to canvass this position. Next slide. Here, this is just a photo showing the poor quality of the borderline fence. The poor quality, as you can see, the one on the right, you can see it's been patched 100 times in that space. You can see where the vehicles have crossed before, but it was cut. You can see old zinc hanging there, trying to patch. And this, it ends up being done by soldiers to patch when they've cut the fence. On your left, you will see a long stretch there, but look at that fence and say if it's really have a deterrent or it can prevent a person to cross or a vehicle to cross. It is really poor quality. I've heard recently that it is called a washing line. Our borderline fence is called a washing line. This is just an example when you say we wish this to be addressed by government. Next slide. Again, in terms of optimization, I spoke about initiatives and innovations, where we are saying commanders at all levels will continue being innovative and coming up with initiatives to mitigate the capability shortcomings, underline mitigate the capability shortcomings that we have accepted, and not necessarily accepted, it's now inherent with us. Optimize by having initiatives. This photo, I believe many of the members of the committee, they've seen it before. They know the initiatives that were done in certain areas. This is in KZN area, where soldiers felt that fence, it's like there's nothing in terms of vehicles crossing with speed. We went as far as looking around, finding solutions. Firstly, we started with sleepers that is used at sea and at the railway tracks. It didn't work, and then we went with these big rocks or boulders, which will really prevent a vehicle or damage the vehicle or delay the vehicle to cross. Innovations. And in the area of Mpumalanga, I do not have the photos. That side we dig trenches, literally, so that we go and dig trenches so that the vehicle will fall into the trench or will be delayed. Someone have to try and put things to go across that area. Next slide. Furthermore, another initiative that we are bringing in, and I know many of the members of the committee has seen this initiative and into innovative idea to deploy obstacles, basically to deploy obstacles in the form of jersey barriers, which is also done by the in KZN Mozambique borderline. You will see behind this concrete. Here's the fence just behind. If that concrete barricades were not there, the vehicle will just drive across and hit that fence and move. With this one, it is really working. The unfortunate part, I'm told that it is not being extended beyond the initial plan because of certain challenges that I really do not know at this stage. Before, when I was in that province, I knew what was the challenges and they were being resolved, but it seems it has not happened. These are initiatives. You will see in the future many more initiatives and innovations purely to maximize on what we have and mitigate the shortcomings. Next slide. Now, there was the point of technology usage that I had to brief the committee. In this slide, only one slide, we are saying technology has been utilized in border safeguarding for a number of years to date and continue being utilized, however, periodically. That technology is in the form of UAVs, which are deployed as part of the battlefield surveillance element or capability. The issue of UAVs, someone will say, but it's the first time you speak about that in border safeguarding, you are applying or using technology. I think that was an oversight from us, maybe clouded by, we saw when UAVs came into the military environment, we saw it as just one of those gadgets or capabilities which are for military use. We didn't see really as a groundbreaking technology because it comes from using aircrafts. which are manned, and then it was developed to saying, okay, we can have an aircraft that is not manned. And the initial ones were very big, were huge. And then it was brought down to develop to a small, which still gives you an effect. So we didn't really speak about it, that we have technology already. And two, what we had, it was very limited. That's why it was limited to battlefield surveillance unit in the intelligence formation of the army. And it even now still being deployed when we have battlefield surveillance deployed. Currently, if I can, I think it started way back as 2012, if not 2013, when we deployed best elements of the UAVs. Battlefield surveillance is a very small unit in the intelligence formation. We do deploy it permanently in Mpumalanga. In Mpumalanga, it is permanently. We've deployed it in Limpopo, and we've deployed it in KZN. But they periodically, at certain timings, when we see there's a need, and it is available. It's the issue of reduction of structures and or funding disabled us to be able to increase this battlefield surveillance unit. Was really, it does make a difference. It's what mainly, as it says, battlefield surveillance would be to surveil right into the front and be able to see what is happening there. It's one environment that could have been increased as a unit and its element and be utilized regularly. But unfortunately, we are in this situation currently. The second bullet, in terms of technology usage, I'm confirming again that new technology systems in the form of sensors and radars are being acquired for deployment on the borderline by next year, 2023. I really, in the portfolio committee presentation, I did indicate that procurement process has commenced. And our target is to be delivered in this financial year and then be deployed in this financial year. That is basically what I can present in terms of technology usage. The shortcomings will be seen when we have now in the land environment domain that sensors and radars are being deployed, and then we'll be able to see going forward. The shortcomings that we have, because radars and sensors are standard in the air domain as well as in the maritime domain. But currently they are not at the required standard and are not adequate. There is shortcomings. It's one of the efforts that the SANDF will have to deal with and address in the future. And the Deputy Minister has raised several times the issue of the Maritime Domain Awareness Center, MDEC. The center is there. It is operational. It's got units in Western Cape. It's got units in Durban, but it is not at the required standard because of contract issues. Was where it's supposed to be in terms of maximized. It must be able to interact with other role players at sea, specifically the ports and all the elements, Department of Forestry and Fisheries, but it is not there. And the Deputy Minister has really impressed on us that it's one environment that we must apply effort to bring it to full operationality and effectiveness. So it's one of those things that we will, I have spoken to the Navy. Going forward, we will have to make it to maximize on the MDEC. Next slide. Next slide, please. Now here is, again, as part of optimization, as I did speak about it earlier, the government contribution that I raised, we, as the DoD, or the required government contribution rather, if I can be explicit, we are saying DoD proposes for the involvement and contribution by other government departments for a dedicated whole of government effort to address the lack of capabilities in the protection of our borderline. By means of what we propose, the opening up or establishment of patrol routes along the entire stretch of the borderline, consideration to establish a servitude area or restricted zone along the entire stretch of the borderline, as well as adoption of the KZN provincial government initiative of installing or deploying barricades to make it difficult to prevent easier cross-border movement across the borderline. That is the proposal when you say a contribution by other government department. Patrol roads, why we saying this, government must really come on board and address this as a proposal, and we feel strongly on this one. Currently, when you are patrolling on the borderline, you must patrol along the borderline, along the fence. There are areas which are inaccessible because of the condition of the road. If it's a road which was just opened by us patrolling regularly, it was not a road that was set up as a patrol road. So we do need patrol roads. You'll find areas where the farms as well as households, they are part of the borderline of the fence. So which means when we want to patrol and we are patrolling along the fence, you'll arrive at a farm where you cannot proceed as you want to patrol along the stretch. You then have to go back 20, 30 kilometers, get to the main road, drive around that farm or 3 farms, and then come back to be able to access the borderline or the fence itself. So if there are patrol roads, that area will have to be demarcated and opened up that it is a patrol road. There cannot be a household, there cannot be a farm in that area. It must be opened up and established as a patrol road and be maintained as a road that we can easily drive and maneuver in that area. Again, other government departments are really expected to do that. The second one, which is we classify it as a robust approach, as the DoD, we feel that if as government we are serious about security, we can adopt a robust approach, wherein now we bring in the issue of a servitude area or restricted zone. What does it mean to have a servitude or restricted zone? It is that portion of land which belongs to government and is under the control of the security elements, which anyone is prohibited to be in that area. If you are seen in that servitude or restricted zone, you are committing a crime and you must be arrested. Currently, what is happening? In the fence, anyone can stand on the fence or next to the fence. The only criminality will be to jump across the fence. But when he was standing there, plowing there along the border fence, there's a farm which its last fence is the border fence, and there is no space for us to control. And if it's a servitude, as you know, in front of your house is what is called servitude, which belongs to the municipality. If you build there or do anything, municipality can arrive and do anything because it is purely for that. It is not your area. It is in front of your house, but belongs to a government. That is why I use the word servitude or restricted zone. The normal military terms is this what we call no man's land. I didn't want to go that route, but we are saying this government must consider this. And how, why I'm saying government, because the land currently belongs to those people who are there, the households which were divided by colonialism, timings where the family was split along the borders, and there are farms there. Government must secure that land, in one way or another, and becomes be owned rather by government and under control of the security forces. The third one is the one of the initiatives which I believe and strongly believe that it is one of the good initiatives and a solution, creating barricades and obstacles to prevent easy cross-border movement along the line. Yes, the Jersey barrier, it does not necessarily cater for people, but a person will have to climb and jump. But a vehicle, it does take, it does deal with a vehicle which trying to cross. I just omitted to put a photo where criminals did try to drag a vehicle across and then it caught fire. But I feel, and we feel, that this can be. I will quote Chair Ukaba when you were visiting the area of Mangozi, one and with other members of the committee asked the question, why is this not rolled out in all the borderlines where we have challenge of easy cross-border vehicle movement? We're asking us, but it is not in our control and in our environment to for that to be taken as a requirement and be done. I support that. I maybe I'm passionate because I was one of those who were part of this initiative. That I recall 2013, I was part of the provincial JCPS, and there was this issue of cross-border movement, stolen of vehicles. Then I was presented to the JCPS that one of the solutions is to limit and to create an environment that is not easy for a vehicle to drive across. The natural area there is flat, so Sandy, you can drive very easily. And then we said obstacles. My friend said you must put in obstacles and build obstacles. And that time we already started with trying to put railway sleepers. And the government adopted that, and they came up with this Jersey barrier, which at a certain stage was classified as the Department of Defense and the government of KZN is now building Trump wall, which was not something true. So this is what we are proposing that government must contribute. Next slide. As part of optimizing the effort. This is just a photo indicating on your right, those are the vehicle tracks. This is what we patrol in that area. It's a road because of driving there frequently. On your left, I just use this photo where you can see the area that is open on the borderline. On your right, where you see railway sleepers is in South African side. If we have this area, we can then be secured as a servitude, and it belongs to government. No one should be allowed to stand there. If he or she stands there, it's a crime and we arrest him immediately. But currently, I could have had a photo where people will be standing along that fence and there's soldiers are patrolling. There's nothing we can do. It's free. So just a small portion, which will be a restricted zone. Next slide. Then the next slide is about successes. There was a requirement that I speak to successes. I use the approach of quarter one and quarter two, a first quarter and the second quarter. The first quarter being April to June, and then July to September. Just a table where we captured the successes. You will see covering the different provinces and covering the undocumented persons, apprehended, contrabands, goods confiscated, narcotics, weapons, livestock, stolen vehicles, and criminals, which were for both this slide and next slide is just the different periods, and you'll see the amounts there in terms of monetary value and the numbers. Next slide. This is the second slide from July to September. And then lastly, then I bring in the challenges of the current border safeguarding operations. I indicated the concept, I indicated our approach, I indicated what we see going forward and what can be done in the approach of optimizing. But then I have to bring in challenges that you are faced with. It's just an extract of, it's quite really a huge and a big number of challenges, but I just extracted few that are really of high level and of importance. Lack of adequate mobility, both on land, air, and sea, as well as transport capabilities. What's the difference between mobility and transport capabilities? Mobility is those platforms, vehicles, aircrafts that we must get on or drive whilst we're doing our work, patrolling. But the support environment is about transportation of sustainment, water, food, items. That also, there's a big, for many years, we only spoke about those which we need to do our work, physically patrolling, and we did not speak about the transportation of the items that we need. It's very important. Currently, we are very low. And second bullet is about the facilities for soldiers in the deployment area, which affects the morale of deployed soldiers, as I spoke about it earlier. It is a challenge because it lessens the effort and commitment when the morale is low. If and when we have to address this, it will form part of optimizing. Soldiers will stretch themselves. We can really not negate morale whenever we do our work, because it really multiplies. One person end up doing a work of more than one person, 2 or 3, when the person has morale. The third point is the cumbersome and lengthy procurement process, which affects the sustainment and support to the deployed soldiers. Yeah, in the military, even though we are in peacetime, but one element which is important is continuous and adequate log supply support. It is a critical enabler. Here, as an example, I want to make an example, Chair. A simple thing like you want to repair a tire in a vehicle which has a puncture, or a windscreen which has hit a tree or a stone and then it has cracked. It takes quite a lengthy period, and that vehicle now is out of usage. Cumbersome, the current procurement process that we have as the country is really very lengthy and is cumbersome. We are not saying we do not want the PFMA, but I'm one of those who propagate for a procurement process that is tailor-made and suitable for security. I'm saying for security, and then we narrow it down to military operations as well, or primarily. It can be in the PFMA, but it must be tailor-made. It must be able to say, I went there, planned that I have a firefight with this amount of ammunition, and then it happens, I get into a firefight, it goes beyond that, and immediately I must have replenishment. And our program process does not allow that. I'm making an example of conventional, but it's applicable now. It's a challenge, Chair and members of the committee. Also, thirdly, the poor borderline infrastructure is a serious impediment. That border fence that I showed, the poor patrol roads, there's no access road. It is a challenge that needs to be addressed. It will maximize our effort if it is addressed. And the last bullet is legislative impediments. As I crafted, I do not have a better English to express this. Legislative impediments do exist when we are there in the borderline, and it affects us. It is a challenge. For instance, when a vehicle has crashed through the fence and just the other side of the fence, criminals, they stop the vehicle, sit on the boat, they smoke, they drink alcohol, showing off and laughing at us, because we are not allowed, or we are prohibited to do what is called pursuit, hot pursuit. It is part of military activities, but we are prevented. We cannot cross the borderline pursuing a vehicle that we know, we have seen it was stolen. First, it is stolen, and that's why it is running away, and then it crosses the borderline, which is another crime. But our current legislation does not allow us to. We then have to stop. It is, according to us, a legislative impediment. I would believe something can be done, and have cooperation with the other countries, that if we are sure, we can carry on with a hot pursuit. Those are the challenges, Chair. 2, 4, 5 points. Next slide. Now, this slide addresses the point of briefing regard to cooperation with the BMA and its impact. It is very limited. It's just one slide. Here, the BMA is a new baby. They are still busy. They are not yet fully functional, and we have not interacted with them fully or in high numbers in terms of the space that we are, which is the responsibility of the Department of Defense according to the Act. What I can present is that implementation protocol between the DOD and the BMA, which is designed to regulate and guide the cooperation and working together in the same area, was drafted, it was agreed upon, and it was signed, and it is operational. That because it took some time for us, because we had to address the issue of 2 different elements in the same space, and especially with the border guards, which according to the BMA Act, they are allowed to be on the borderline. Now, 2 elements carrying weapons, it needs really tight control, and those are the issues that were dealt with extensively for quite a long time, until we reached consensus, and implementation protocol was drafted and signed, so which really guides us what we should do and how. The second issue, that in terms of cooperation between us and the BMA, I'm saying it is currently in place. We are having cordial relations or relationships, and thus, there are no challenges thus far. Chair and members of the committee, I really could not be able to go further than this to present or brief the committee about the work of the BMA. Much of their work is in the port of entry. That's where they are taking over the command and control and the actual business there. We, as the SANDF, we are not at the port of entry. I can really not say what is happening there. Is it successful? Is there a better flow of movement? Are the what was challenges been addressed? And I really is unable to. The only thing that we know, which we have seen, is this first element of border guards, which was came through. They are deployed, Chair, in Limpopo, in Mpumalanga, Limpopo at Bait Bridge, in Mpumalanga at Komati Port, then in KZN at Kosi Bay, and they are deployed in the Free State in 2 areas, Maseru, the border post, and Fixback, a border post. Limited, the border guards are deployed alongside, outside of the port of entry, covering these areas where the Komakomas, they use it to bypass the border post. They are deployed, the very limited number of the border guards in those areas. They have not yet interacted with us on the borderline itself. We interact with them because we were covering that area, which is just outside of the port of entry. But again, even there, we were sacrificing ourselves as being passionate with our work, because the 10-kilometer outside of the port of entry is not for us. But we've been deploying there, covering the area, and the border guards are there. We're still there as well, because it's static issues. Really, we cannot say whether it makes a difference or not. Is there a change or not? We'll see it going forward. That is as far as I can brief you about the BMA cooperation with the BMA. The next slide is the conclusion, Chair. In our conclusion, I'm saying the SANDF force elements deployed on the borderline will continue working hard with commitment, dedication, and zeal to achieve the set objectives, and continue making a difference despite the serious capacity challenges the DoD is faced with. Someone can have his or her own opinion or take with making a difference, but we believe that we are making a difference. Furthermore, we are saying commanders and soldiers entrusted with the border safeguarding effort will continue coming up with innovations and initiatives in order to dominate the borderline area of operations, optimization of our effort. We are saying work is underway to bring in technology in the form of sensors and radars as a force multiplier in the medium term. Lastly, conclusion, confirming again, it is our proposal that consideration for a more robust approach for security, wherein the government should own a portion of land along the borderline, which will be a servitude or restricted zone, which will be exclusively under the control of the security cluster. We see this as a more robust approach, because I see, and many of us see, that over years we took a soft approach. Let us not rattle the gate and maybe relations with our sister countries, sharing the borders, a very soft approach. But I feel now it is detrimental to the security, and our communities are really unhappy and up in arms in this. I believe as government, we must take a more robust approach. One of them is the servitude. This servitude was meaning some communities will be denied that part that currently they own. It must be owned by government. And 2, if it's a restricted zone, it must be a criminal offense to be found in that zone. It must only be under our control and people being prohibited. That is a robust approach, we are saying, and we hope and I wish the committee will support us on this one and share it in Parliament, that let us not take security easily and very softly. It is detrimental to the good standing of our country. That is my conclusion, Chair. I remain available for questions, remarks, and inputs. I submit.
Thank you very much, General. Very comprehensive presentation. I think it touches all the essential points. Maybe before I recognize the team. I don't know if the DM wants to come in now or maybe after the deliberations.
Chair, thank you very much. I think at this point, I'm quite comfortable with the presentation made. I can come in at the end of the members' observations and concerns to share a word. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, DM. And your budget, General, I'm looking at the expropriation for the year past, 21-2022, was 4.1 billion rand. Now, I would demand. So I'm trying to understand before, so that we are on the same page, all of us. You see, is it possible just to indicate where your role starts and where it ends as a chief of joint operations with this budget that is allocated to you? Okay, and then two. I also looked at the national estimates of expenditure going back 3 years, I think from 2018. Yes, 2018. Yes, that's how far back I went. Looking at what each program set out as its purpose. And so I'll just focus on program 5 and program 4. And, in program 5, for example, it's maritime defense. Maritime defense, the purpose of that program is to provide prepared and supported maritime defense capabilities for the defense and protection of South Africa, and then to defend and protect South Africa and its maritime zones over the midterm by providing, okay? It says, these are the things it provides. Maybe it's an ideal thing, but you'll comment on it. It says, in order for you to defend and protect South Africa and its maritime zones over the midterm period, you must provide a surface combat and patrol capability of 3 frigates and 1 combat support vessel, 2 offshore patrol vessels, and 3 inshore patrol vessels in each annual operational cycle. A subsurface combat capability of 2 submarines in each annual operational cycle. 3, a mine warfare capability of 2 vessels in each annual operational cycle. And 4, a maritime reaction squadron capability comprising an operational boat division, an operational diving division, and a naval reaction division in each annual operational cycle. And then 5thly, a hydrographic survey capability to ensure safe navigation by charting areas and to meet international obligation. So you have mentioned this in all the years from 2018. I did not go beyond 2018. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2022. this is what you've actually been mentioning. And then for program 4, this is what you say. For program 4, it's air defense, and the purpose is to defend, is to, of course, prepare and support air defense capabilities for the defense and protection of South Africa. And then the objective is to defend and protect South Africa and its airspace over the midterm by providing 4 helicopter squadrons and 1 combat support helicopter squadron per year, 3 medium-term squadrons, 1 VIP, namely 1 VIP, 1 maritime and transport squadron, and 1 light transport squadron, and 9 reserve squadrons per year. And thirdly is 1 air combat squadron per year, and of course an ongoing 24-hour command and control capability. So we know that on the borderline is 15 companies that you are providing, and to ensure that we have boots on the ground. Now, my comment is this that I'm reading out what is available, but I know for sure that some is not available. It's just a wish list. And is it possible to come back to us and say, look, this was a wish list for an ideal situation, but what is available that I can vouch for as Chief Joint Operations are the following, and so that we get a sense of where the things are. And so that's my issue. I hope you were able to take them down when you respond or comment on what I'm saying. Having said that, I will recognize Mr. Mare and Mr. Rader. Mr. Mare and Mr. Rader.
Chair, thank you very much. Thank you, General, for your presentation. I'm going to try to deal with the presentation as you've given me, and I will probably just deviate a little bit from that. If I go back to slide 5, and I specifically want to ask you about cyberspace domain, which is your responsibility. And I want you to give us more information on your need for cyberspace domain capability. You know, what is happening at the moment in that domain, and what can we expect? I get the impression that cyberspace is mentioned there, but either we do not think big enough, and I'm not saying that, you know, what is achievable and sustainable and affordable is the same as in terms of what we should be doing. And your needs will obviously, I assume, will be a lot more than what we can afford. But if we do not know that, then it's very difficult to measure.
You're now debating the point, Mr. Mare.
I'm asking the question. I'm just motivating that.
Yeah,
so if you can give us that, because we have to think further than UAVs. Further on in the presentations, you refer to UAVs that you are using. In the past, we were told that there are 2 UAVs being used along the border of Kruger, but that is actually UAVs from Kruger and not from the Defence Force. So where do we stand with regards to UAVs and the expansion to UAVs? When we look at also slide 5, border safeguarding, where you are mentioning those, you are responsible for the outside the port of entries, and you've touched on that later on as well. How you've mentioned 10 kilometers, but for which area outside on both sides along the border, from where are you responsible, and which areas will be the responsibility of the BMA? I know that the BMA is probably not fully operational, but what is that area that they will be responsible for, and from which point will you be responsible going further outside is that? Then on slide 6, we know that you have to prevent that. That's your objectives. But we know it's, there's a lot happening, and that is filtering, it's coming through over the borders. In your opinion, what is the success of deterrence, given that all these are still happening? And what do you need for your job of border safeguarding to have a greater success in creating deterrence? Then in terms of slide 7, you give us the 15 companies where they are deployed. Now, if you can just explain to us, obviously there's huge differences in distances that must be covered by each headquarters. But what is the distance that a company must cover in terms of either by foot or by vehicle? And how many soldiers are there per shifts, and how many groups are there to perform these duties? What I'm trying to get to, we know that 15 is not enough, and you have just said that to increase that to beyond 15 is highly unlikely. So obviously one must just try to determine how well do we cover these border lines with boots on the ground, without all these other extra things that we need to assist us. Then I want to ask you, you've indicated the multi-mission inshore patrol vehicle vessels that will be coming in from next year. Obviously, then it's over the next 3 years. And we know that if our information is correct, the 3 frigates plus the 3 submarines are still not serviceable and operational. So how does that affect your successes and efficacy in terms of border controls? Then in terms of your mentioning of UAVs, drones, radars, et satellite, how far have you gone in terms of sensors? We have seen when we visited Henselt at the at Air Force Base Waterkloof, the enormous capabilities of their radars and sensors. But I get the impression that that is to a much lesser extent that we are using that. And one of the points that I want to get to is that we know that the National Treasury has basically given us 225 million for borderline technology, of which we know that some have been used for fighting COVID, others was using for other infrastructure, and it's only now that you're going to use, I think, 85 million for borderline technology, and how that will impact and how you will be able to use that, and also on UAVs and drones specifically. Then on slide 10.
So you have taken 5 minutes. So, Mr. Marais, you have taken 5 minutes. How much more time you still need?
Just a few questions. So just a very few.
So 2 minutes.
No, 5 minutes maximum. On slide
another 5
10,
minutes.
Yeah.
That will be 10 minutes.
Pardon? Yeah. Thank you very much. Just on slide
No, Mr.
10,
Marais, you have taken. No, Mr. Marais, I'll take a second round so that you allow others to question, and then I'll come back to you. Is that fine with that? Yeah,
because I mean,
I'll come back to you.
You must say in advance if we only have got 2 minutes, then I can.
No, you had 5. You've taken 5.
Yeah, but if you say that I only have got 5, then you must tell me beforehand, please. But okay, I'll wait for the second round.
So no, I'll come back
because the important ones are still coming.
Mr. Rader.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, yeah, my question is a lot less detailed and a lot more general. than that. So really, it's just a question around the Border Management Authority, and there's a transitional phase, and I don't think I understand quite, and I think I heard the same sentiment perhaps coming out of what you were saying, Chair, is that so there's a transition from the current status to the Border Management Authority. I'm not sure that I understand properly the role that the South African National Defence Force is going to play going forward. You know, if perhaps the General can give us an indication of you know where we are now in terms of the duties that are taken on board by the SANDF, what will be taken away from the Defence Force going forward by the Border Management Authority, and what kind of transition period are we having a look at you know, until this gets achieved? I really need to understand the different kind of role in order to understand if the Border Management Authority is actually something that's going to be effective, or if it's just a good idea that's going to die in the actual implementation. So really just some comments, please, about where we are now and where we're going, and what the future is going to look like. Thank you, Chair.
Are you done, Mr. Raider?
Yes, I am, sir.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Mutle?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and good evening. Chair, my first question is in line with what the Honorable Raider has asked, but my angle will be to find out from CJ Ops the impact that the BMA deployed personnel has made in terms of has there been a relief in terms of the work that they have been doing all along since the deployment of those BMA guards that have been launched somewhere this year by Minister of Home Affairs. Subsequent to that, in terms of their working relation with those border guard, if that can be clarified so that there is no how do I call it, Chair? The BMA guards are doing the same work that the deployed soldiers are doing. There's no duplication of responsibilities at the borderline. Secondly, Chair, is with regard to the air border or airspace, because our concentration it's on the land border and the sea border. In terms of their capabilities, how well are they doing in terms of securing our air borders, and what are the challenges in that regard, and where do they, if there are challenges, how do they expect us to, how best can we then assist in that regard? And I want to agree with CJ Ops on the proposal that they are making around servitude, because that will go a long way. Though I think their proposal it came a bit late. I think it should have came when we were discussing, Chair, the issue of the land owned by the South African National Defence Force, because already we have mandated the minister, and this issue should be packaged together with that particular issue that we're discussing around the land owned by the South African National Defence Force, because that servitude will form part of the land that must be owned or be under the custodian of the South African National Defence Force. And I think it's an important issue. It must be integrated to that particular issue that we have discussed before, so that whenever we reach a positive conclusion with regard to that matter, this one should be incorporated as well. So I'm supporting that particular proposal, and I hope the committee will not find any difficulties to do so, because this will assist and make their work easy going forward. So, yeah, with that said, Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have Lekwase and the Motomai. Lekwase.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, mine is just a general question of interest and taking cue from what has been said by Honorable Mutle and Honorable Ryder, to say that now that there's Border Management Authority, one would have an interest on how the reporting will be, especially from the side of those departments that are not falling under the Home Affairs. In this instance, we're talking of the Defence Force. Secondly, Chair, we have been challenges with our port. We have been having challenges with our porous borders in the presence of the SANDF, where they are tasked with the responsibility of safeguarding our borders. One's interest, according to your observation as the Defence Force, what change is the BMA, or what improvement is the BMA coming with from your side or on your side with safeguarding the borders? And with what you have been going through or you've been experiencing at borders, have you tried to come up with ways to strengthen your work? And have you maybe considered looking at technological solutions which you may apply when you get to borders? But most of my main concentration and my main confusion might be, how is the line of reporting going to be from all these other departments? Because we know the department that heads this BMA is the Home Affairs. To an extent that, who do we blame when things do not go accordingly at the level of the borders? One may just want clarity on that, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Motomai.
Thank you, Chairperson. The Honorable Mutle have said mouthful. I was going to raise the issue of the land, but I cannot repeat what you have said. Thank you, Chair.
Was your hand up, Co-Chair?
Yeah, it was up, and then I lowered it because some of the questions I wanted to ask were asked by the other honorable members. But I just want to check generally the army used to have their own graders, to do fire breaks and their own internal roads. What has happened to those gandas? Is it possible that do we really need approval of public works to budget for graders to do that? And what other methods can be used? For instance, I remember to see soldiers pulling these big tractors, big tires, using them to level the internal roads. And again, Chairperson, is it? I've seen the SANDF solving problems, in the Val Dam area and the Val Dam catchment area. They did the assignment within record time and they did a clean job, stopping all the leakages. Can't we do that in our own basis? To do that, you know, do we need public works permission to put in broken window panes? Because these are some of the things that make the buildings to be dilapidated, leaking. You know, the toilets are leaking. All this. Do we really need public works to stop the leakages where we live? Do we need public works actually to remove the grass and cut the grass near the bases and camps where our soldiers are staying? I think some of the things can be done internally if we are to focus on solving the problems. But I think the PCDM also should come in and help with meeting in the National Assembly with the Committee on Public Works, or maybe we can do it also as the Joint Standing Committee, you know, to negotiate that some of the things should be given to the army to do. I know that this discussion was entertained possibly before, and then what is the progress in relation to those issues that were raised? There were issues raised by the BRRR, and you know that were raised by the NA, by the PCDM in the National Assembly. How do we respond to this and ensuring that we are on par in terms of what our agreements are? Thanks, Chairperson.
Okay.
Otherwise, the rest of the questions were asked by the members. Thank you.
I will then come back for a second round, which will include follow-up questions. I now turn to the General for the first round of responses, or responses to the first round of questions.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and the honorable members of the committee. Pardon me, I will respond to this in reverse. I will try and respond to Co-Chair Lati. Your questions are much more outside of the environment of operations. But what I can say is...
It's your video is not on. Do you have a problem setting it on? And for all those who are going to speak, if you may try, unless it interferes with your connectivity.
Okay, I'll try, Chair, and see if it does not disturb. Thank you, Chair. I was saying the questions by Co-Chair Nchabaleng are actually outside of the environment of operations, as we have different services and division. But what I can say is there is work done in that environment with the conceptualization and inception of the Defence Works Formation. It is done by the Defence Works Formation to a limited extent. As we've indicated, it was agreed on phases of devolving functions of Defence Works, of DPWI to our Defence Works Formation, where we can able to. I know that we have taken over the issues of municipality bills and management in that effect, and with the Works Formation, these areas where, or environments where we have done buildings ourselves, we do repair, but it is a small element of the Defence Works that we have, Defence Works Formation that we have. Speaking under correction, but I'll say what if there's limited success that is seen with the Defence Works Formation, it's because we are faced with a very huge situation with limited resources. The unit Defence Works is very small and is still being developed to the required standard. They do make a difference. I think it was presented where you saw new technology in terms of green energy in the Air Force Base in Limpopo. I think in one of the presentations as well, the General Dwaba retired demonstrated or presented houses that we built in Saldanha, Langipan area, but it is not enough to revamp or renew the entire capability of facilities of the Defence Force of many years. So in that, in the operations environment, we utilize engineers, which is also a very small element. And I believe you're quite well aware that there was a plan or requirement by the DoD to increase that capability of the engineers. But it came now at a time when there's funding shortages, as well as clamp down on the structures, not necessarily structures, on the number of numbers in the Defence Force as is. So the results of dilapidation and bases which are not really clean are as a result of that. Someone will say it's an excuse, not necessarily. You just have to compare 1994 going forward. I don't want to speak about, I do not know what was happening before 1994, but in the early years, before the budget cuts came into effect, what is being raised now was not there. That one is a fact. In example, in a unit, a base, you will have what we call PSEPs, groundsmen who will do the grounds work in terms of cleaning. We had cleaners, civilians. Then the soldiers were purely faced with training, conducting operations, and in rest. Now, when all of that is gone, then soldiers must divide themselves and must try and do all of this. It's really is difficult, but we are trying to. And the current dispensation, there is environments which I said they've evolved in terms of function of the DPWI, allowed it to be handled by the Defence Force, but there are those which have not yet devolved. When you have to do some minor changes or construction or whatever in a base, in any facility, you have to get DPW authority. Even if it's yourself who's going to do that, there must be DPW authority. So all of those impediments are still active. We can really see the difference when we've been able to take over all the functions that were done by DPWI, but I'm not sure if we'll be able to achieve with the numbers we have. Let me make an example. All other departments, DPW is responsible for facility management and control and repairs. Everyone is not happy. And it's not only the DoD, we've got dilapidated buildings.
You have spent a bit of time on this issue. I'm sure you can pass on to other questions. That is in view of time.
Okay, thank you, Chair. To me, Honorable Lekwase, the BMA issue and reporting by those departments which are not under Home Affairs, like us as the SANDF, there is no reporting. We are not under command of the BMA. BMA is not our command. The BMA is I think it comes from the coordinating function. Before we had BC, OCC, there's a number of structures that were designed to try and coordinate the effort in the border post, because there's a different number of departments. Even then, it was never, we were never involved as the Department of Defense. We are outside of the port of entry. On the borderline, according to the Act, we are responsible, and we are not reporting to any other department. We are independent. That's why I indicated that the implementation protocol came in just to regulate and assist in the working environments, how we're going to work together, where we are going to meet together. It is only when the border guards are deployed on the borderline. For now, they are not yet on the borderline, the border guards. And even when they are on the borderline, through implementation protocols and coordination, we'll be able to work with them. And we've done that before with SAPS, within other departments. The usage of technology, I think I did touch on it when I was presenting, that we had it to a limited extent, the UAVs, but now it is underway. There will be technology which will act as force multiplier. It is baby steps, but we'll get there. And I do wish that we get to be supported and given space. When it's the first time, we will make mistakes. We might make mistakes. We might not choose the best. And there's the environment. Next year, when we've deployed, we'll see how it is going, and we believe we'll be able to deploy it effectively. Honorable Motle, again, the impact of BMA deployment on our work in our areas, there is none. There is no impact. There hasn't been a negative impact or a positive impact. On the borderline, it's still the SANDF on our own. I've indicated that the small elements in the 5 border posts, the border guard, the very limited number, are deployed. Some of them work inside the port of entry as we see them. Some of them are on the side of the port of entry, just outside of the gate on the sides. That's where we see where they are patrolling. So there's no effect or affecting our work in the borderline. We are not sure whether there is a positive. I did say whether in the port of entry itself there's a difference with the BMA. I cannot really pronounce myself. We are not in that space. Any duplication of responsibility? No. It's a no. We're still doing our work, and we're still carrying on our work. If and when they get onto the borderline, they will just be complementing us. And we have thinking how we can utilize them all together, but I wish not to express myself here now. When they are fully deployed and they need to be on the line, we will plan accordingly. The BMA has said they will focus on vulnerable areas, meaning where they see their gaps. If that is the approach, then it's good. They'll cover other gaps that we are unable to cover because of the numbers, but it will not change our work. How well we are doing in securing the airspace domain, and what are the challenges? The challenges is capabilities. We do not have adequate capabilities to be able to really say we are covering the airspace domain accordingly. We do have radars, but I don't think to a satisfactory level, but we do need air assets patrolling in the air on the borderline. At this stage, we do not have. Thank you for the support of the proposal of the servitude. To Mr. Honorable Rider, duties taken over by BMA in the transition phase. No, there are no duties that have been taken over by the BMA from us, and there will be no duties or functions taken over by the BMA from us, including when they are border guards. it's clear in the Act and it's clear in the implementation protocols that we've agreed with the BMA. Honorable Mr. Mare, I think we spoke about cyberspace. I just brought in the issue of the cyberspace, preempting that if I only speak about the 4 domains, the question would be, but what about cyberspace? Cyberspace is something that is new to the country and to government. And I think still in the responsibility of government to deal with cyber and bring it in, and then also to be brought in our areas where we need to deploy cyber. So I cannot really say much on that. And I do believe, honorable members of the committee, you should appreciate that is a sensitive area. There is no country where they speak openly and easily about cyber space. I just indicated it is in the new era. There is what is cyber domain, which will be required to cover the border safeguarding. I think that's all I can speak. A utilization of the UAVs, I'm not sure, but the one that we said the UAVs that were used were from the Kruger National Park. Yes, we work together and collaborate and cooperate with the Kruger National Park and its management and the rangers. We do use their capabilities where there's a need, but I was presenting from our own UAVs that we have and indicated, deployed in Limpopo, deployed in KZN as well, and is in Mpumalanga. You'll recall that we did present that during Operation Notlela, when we had to try and close everything, we did deploy UAVs in Limpopo specifically. So that is it. The other big asset of UAVs we deployed in Okmistra. Area of responsibility of BMA, I've indicated. It's in the port of entry and just outside the port of entry for now. If they have to get into the borderline, we'll manage it accordingly. For now, they are not there. What have we do I think we have achieved in creating a deterrence? Yes. We have created a deterrence. The example is when the country and government took a decision to say the borderline control environment must be handed over to the police. It did not work, and then the SANDF had to be brought back. We are making achieving a deterrence. It's subjective how you measure it. I'm not going to deal with Honorable Mare with how many groupings and the details to cover the gaps. What must be known by the public is that the assessment indicated that we need 22 subunits. That is much I can say. I will not go to the detail of the tactical application of my soldiers. The non-serviceability of frigates and submarines affecting our work. I indicated that there's 3 new vessels, which is the IPVs. They are adequate to do border safeguarding at sea, because they do not go beyond. Border safeguarding is with the territorial waters, not outside of the territorial water. So we have the 3. We'll also need another 3, and it is in the plan of the SA Navy. Technology, I think I've spoken about technology, and yes, again, technology is the new approach is in many environments, and everyone has got an opinion on which one must be used. I do request and that we be given space to do all the research and assessment and see what is relevant, what fits, what can work, what cannot work, what pairs do we have as an inception, as the start. And I said we might make mistakes, but then we learn from it and then we'll improve. When I said in the medium term, I was being optimistic that with the first few that we are going to secure and deploy, then government will assist us with funding going forward. now being informed. We will make mistakes in the beginning, and we should not be judged very quickly. Allow us, we must be corrected. We have a plan for this first element that will be deployed, and we'll take you through, we'll visit and see, and have input. To Chair Uhlalo Xaba, the role of Chief Joint Office in the funding allocation as it is given, well, that's generally not in my environment. It is at the other environment of military strategy and defense strategy, and in the secretariat. But what we do is what we call an environmental scan every year, and all service and division chair and all programs. We in operations, we also do the same. We look historically what we've been doing, what has been the scope of work in terms of operations, and what is the situation when we're doing those scale, showing us in the future. And then we present that to the relevant forum, and we say we need to be catered for 1, 2, 3. And then it goes into the environment of secretariat, where then DP back, and then they do the allocation to the different programs. But it is important to understand that in the joint operations environment or division, or that program of force employment, we are dependent much more from the services and division for who conduct force prep. If you indicated the Navy program and the Air Force, if and when they are supported and have all the capabilities that they need according to the environmental scan and the requirements of operations, which we craft them in the joint force employment requirements, and they are able to provide, is very little that is required to go to joint operations, except for operational needs and or allowances. But in terms of capabilities, Chair, let us get the Air Force serving the capabilities that they are required. As you read there, what they've stated is what they've stated what we need according to the environmental assessment. And if we get that, operations do not necessarily need quite a lot of funding. I did say challenges mainly is in the capabilities and prime mission equipment, which must be from program 3, 4, 5 provided. I hope I've covered all that was asked, Chair.
I recognize the hand of SANDF, but before I ask SANDF, let's check if there are any questions, so that when SANDF comes in, also assist in dealing with the other questions. I'll start with you, Mare.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, General. Just to take on from the last question that I haven't concluded, on the technology, I've started to ask you about the 225 million that was given by National Treasury specifically for technology for border security. And only, it seems like 85 million rand of that funding will this year be spent on technology. Now, obviously, you must report and the department must report on the whole 225 million in terms of the purpose that National Treasury has given us. How will that 85 million rand be spent? And then also, how will you make up for that other 140 million that was not spent on borderline security technology specifically? Then also on technology about border security, whether you are considering any aircraft capabilities like the Mbari of Paramount, to do borderline security. And then in terms of your report on the Jersey barriers, that apparently, there's not, I suppose it is funding. You haven't said that, but I suppose it's funding. Have you considered other cheaper options? We know that when we visited DCD at Air Force Base Waterkloof, they had a barrier there, a borderline barrier that seems to be a more cheaper and a much quicker construction a product that can be used. Then I also want to ask you about, while you are here, on the land cruisers that you are using, and you have indicated about the problem, a problem in terms of procurement, because I want to deal with that as well. On that troop carriers, how much of them are still serviceable, and how much is as a result of the red tape, procurement system that you are limited by. On the Air Force capabilities, and specifically with regards to maritime borderline, what is the plans, and are there plans to resuscitate the capabilities of 35 Squadron? Because, as we know, there's only one old Dakota, and we know that Dakota is like old analog technology. And also the capabilities to patrol not only, inshore capability patrols, but also outshore, and specifically to Prince Edward Islands, where we have got a responsibility. And then I specifically, lastly, want to deal with slide 19, where you have, just want to get to that if you don't mind. On slide 19, where you were concerning about specifically logistics, and then specifically about the cost of infrastructure and everything that is going along that route. I am for one want to make a suggestion to the committee that we have to approach National Treasury in terms of procurement whenever it is an authorized deployment and an operation authorized by the president. In such a cases, there must be and should be a different procurement system. We have experienced it ourselves in Komati Port when we visited there, where that OC has told us that he can't even buy a tire for a Land Cruiser, and therefore the Land Cruiser is not operational or serviceable. So I think in that regard, Chairperson, we have got a responsibility to take that up in our report and to propose that there must be a different alternative in terms of procurement in specific cases like that. Chairperson, that is all from my side at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murray. Sorry, Mr. Ryder.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a response on the BMA then. Is there a service level agreement between the Defence Force and the Border Management Authority? And I seem to recall we've asked for it before, but could we get a copy of the service level agreement between the SANDF and the Border Management Authority? Thank you.
Okay, right. Any other hand, colleagues, as a follow-up or further questions? None. Thank you very much. General, you deal with the balance of the questions. I will then go to the sector for comments, and then the DM.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Honorable Murray and Honorable Ryder. Request for the Memorandum of Understanding. Secretary of Defense will attend to that one, but I did say we do not have an MOA, we've got an implementation protocol. It does not have quite a lot of things, it's just to assist in coordination and cooperation where we are in the same space. Yeah, that's how I can, but SecDef will maybe expand on it. Honorable Mr. Murray, Jersey barrier, you supporting it and saying you saw other that is might be much more quicker and much more cheaper. Yeah, the Jersey barrier is not the responsibility of the Department of Defense and or facilities, or yes, facilities on the borderline itself. It is other government departments. So we cannot really say. For me, I think the Jersey barrier is appropriate. A much more cheaper one, easy to deploy. The criminals are always on the offensive. We applied our mind as military, what military tactics and techniques of digging trenches. That's what we believe, and creating obstacles. The other one, I don't think where I stand, but we propose that if this Jersey barrier can be rolled out everywhere where it's necessary, I think it will work. We have not thought about any other. I did say we'll see a photo where even this Jersey barrier, they attempted the criminals. So it needs something very credible or strong. Visibility of troop packs, it is not at the required level. It is not at the required level because you recall it was in 2017, this December, November, and start really working 2018. Now, those vehicles, daily, day and night, are really at the end of their lifespan, and we had not had funding to replace. I'm saying again, we do not have funding to replace those troop packs. We have had plans as well of maybe much more better, much more robust, still with the necessary speed and agility. But we are constrained by funding allocation. It affects capabilities, but we are making do with what we have. We do repair them and maintain them. Each of the Air Force squadron that proposed would be considered being brought back to operation. I'm not sure. I think the Air Force can be in the better position to answer to that one. Thank you for supporting the proposal of a much more suitable and tailor-made procurement system or regime. Thank you very much. We hope Parliament will buy into it, as you say you are going to present and support it strongly. The technology funding that we have reported that over the 3 years we did not utilize all of it. We are busy with the one of the last year. I think we've presented the reasons and what happened, and I think we really cannot, or should not be saying how we're going to replace that. That was not was used for a good cause in the DoD. We might have not done it correctly, and we have erred, but really it was used during COVID. Everyone has got his own or her opinion if it is right or wrong, but I don't think in South Africa anyone predicted or had control over the COVID situation and the lockdown.
Don't get there. I'm trying to protect you.
Protect me, please.
Sure.
I just hope that you give me space or give us space. We do the one that we're saying we're going to do. You will see and we'll have inputs whether it does address this, and we'll go forward. Just have a little bit of trust in us. We are committed to what we are doing. I submit, Chair.
Yeah, the reason why, General, I asked you not to go there was because there was a 3 billion rand budget for COVID. So when this money was allocated, it was very specific. So that's the reason why we are doing a follow-up on it. And but I don't want us to belabor the point. It was raised previously, and I think the SANDF was still going to come back to us with a reconciliation, given the conflicting statements on it. So I don't want us to belabor it now, because the jury is still out. And I know that you'll still be asked to account on the money that was not spent, but that Treasury will, look at that and advise accordingly. Maybe we should leave that at that for now, because we have already traveled that route. Now, so that now I think General, are you done with all the questions before I ask the SANDF to come in and make other further comments?
Yes, Chair, I'm done. I believe I've covered all the questions.
I think you did, sir. I think you did. Then SANDF, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity. Chair, let me just probably start with the questions that were asked by both the Honorable Ryder as well as the Honorable Lekgwase, and those are the issues around the Border Management Authority. Chair, if we step a moment just back, this issue of...
Is it possible to set your thing on unless you have a good reason to keep it off? Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, Chair. I've switched on my camera. I don't know what's happening. I don't know whether it shows, but
no, it is on now, SANDF.
All right, thank you very much. No, Chair, I just thought that let me start with the issues of the Border Management Authority. The Border Management Authority Chairperson, you see that even the name as we went on, it changed from being a Border Management Agency to being a Border Management Authority. Yes, it has been signed and it has come into force. However, I think if we strictly speak about what is happening, is that it is a process that is still unfolding. And part of that, Chair, it is because there are a number of role players that are expected to do their bit when it comes to issues of border management. So what we have as defense is an implementation protocol that is available. And I think tomorrow we can send it to your office that we have signed between ourselves and the Border Management Authority. Some of the challenges, Chair, as I was saying, this thing is still unfolding. We are not at a point where we say that all the issues have been addressed, because even when we were interacting on it, even at the levels of the DGs and also at the levels of the ministers, then you also found out that there are certain mandates that departments are given as per the Constitution. And now some of those were now falling under the BMA. Then it brings to the fore the question as to then what happens to those departments whose mandate is now shifting a little bit to go that side. So it's all those, and what has happened right now is that the BMA has been signing implementation protocol with different departments. But as General Sangweni is putting it, it's largely more about the cooperation. So even the reporting lines need to be clarified as to what it is that needs to be happening. There were even also expectations that we may have to part with some of the companies and then give them to Border Management Authority. If that happens, then where is the accountability? Is the command going to be from the civilians to the military and all those things? So there are quite a number of things. And I think even when you look at the police, it was more or less similar issues that they were talking about. So I think that the work is still ongoing, where we are trying to find each other and say how best can we deal with all these issues. The second point that I thought I should address, Chair, is the question that you had posed, where you gave that elucidation from 2018, 2019 till 2022, what has been happening. What I can say, Chairperson, is that probably that is what was seen to be what we would view as being ideal. We are not there for a variety of reasons that we can explain. But having listened as well, Chair, we need to go back, I think, as a department and say in the mandate that we have to look after the borders, what are the solutions that we have there? Because what we know for sure is that there is no way that the 22 companies can be deployed. There is just no way. And I think that now, if that is not possible, what do we need to do as the department, as the cluster, to close the gap so that then we are able to address this matter? We probably need to look at what it is that we have, what are the equipments that we have, what are the warm bodies that we have. Let's sit down and also say that for us to get to a point where we feel that we are efficient and effective in the discharge of our responsibility, what do we need to do? Let's even say that in an ideal situation, we were given the money to do the 22 companies. What is better? Is it for us to rather deploy those, or to then say that let's make do with what we have, but let's take the resources, having done our homework on what capabilities we think will help us to really manage our borders, then we cost that and then say, let's ring fence this money and go and get everything that will assist us. Because really, to be honest, from a warm border perspective, and also, Chair, if you look at the presentation that has been done by General Sangwe, it's largely even talking more about the land borders. And from the questions that have been raised, we are talking about the airspace, we are talking about our maritime borders. Today, actually, I received a letter from the DG of the Department of Fisheries, Forestry and Environment, where they say, we want to, she's asking that let us meet, let us engage, because they are worried that our fish resources are being depleted and how we can work together with them. And these are also the borders that we need to do that. Probably in future, it will help us if we brought our Sea Navy, and then we also bring the chief of the effort to deal with that. And the same can be said when it comes to the issues of the effort. Chair, you would recall, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, at most it would be a month ago, we then presented on the DOD Cyber Command, where we went into details on what it is that we have been able to put in place, what are the resources that we have utilized, and we even detailed the areas where we felt that we still have our challenges. And I think it is correct to ask those questions because they are all about our territorial integrity, even though we know that the cyber is a borderless phenomenon. So it is important that we deal with all those issues. Then, Chair, I think the issue of the servitude, it's something that we must investigate further. But what we need to do is that, first of all, those structures, the houses, and those who live next to those borders, who are they? Is it land that is privately owned? Is it the land that is owned by government? And if it is owned by government, who owns it? Because then we need to look and see that. Because if, let's for argument's sake, it is the land that is in private hands, probably it's a question of them saying that this is needed. How do we then engage the owners and see how we can get it so that then we are able to also effectively deal with our borders. And I think even in the presentation, General Sangweni might not have gone into it in detail, that even when we all grew up, we used to know that there's something called the no man's land, that you can leave this country, there is a space in between before you are able to walk and get to the other land, which is for the other country. So I think those are some of the things that have been that would be good for us to look at. Yes, I think, Chair, last week our colleagues were there where they were testing the second inshore patrol vessel. So I think come next year we would have all our 3 IPVs, which means that we'll be in a better position to man our maritime borders, at least with what we have. We still are waiting the finalization of the offshore patrol vessels that are done by the SANDF right in Durban. So, Chair, for me, I think if we move in that fashion where we really do a serious assessment of what we have, what we want, scour the market, what are the things that are there for us, we should then be able to come back and say, this is what we are presenting to you. This is what it will help us in terms of coverage. And if we have all these things, we should be able to say, at what percentage would we say we are standing? Will all that lead us to 100% in terms of us being properly equipped to do our work, or are we at 70%? But when we then say that, then we are able to say, the next step is to say, if we, for argument's sake, we say we're at 70%, how long will it take us to get to another 30%? But at this point in time, and when we do that calculation, it should not only be for land borders, it should be for land borders, it should be for maritime borders, it should be also from our air borders, as well as covering our cyber space. Because, Chair, the Constitution and the Defense Act says our work is to protect and defend the territorial integrity, and all those put together, they constitute exactly that mandate that is given to us by the Constitution. So, Chair, I think that from my side, those are the issues
Recording
that
stopped.
I thought that I wanted to raise at this point in time. Thank you, Chair, very much.
Recording in progress.
Yes, no, thank you very much, SANDF. I like what your approach, because you are opening up a conversation towards an effective, an efficient operation to deal with the issue of borderlines, be it coastal, airspace, and land. And of course, you also include the cyberspace as well. And maybe before I ask the DM to come in, let's agree that SANDF, you were not in the meeting. We asked for an audit of land that is the SANDF land that is under claim. Just to get a sense of where we stand in relation to that, and maybe an update of where the claim is. Is it? Are we asking? Are we going to restore the land back to the people from whom it was taken, or would prefer to settle to give them money in return, so that we get a sense of how critical that land is to the work of the South African Defence Force. And we don't want to get into the history of how that land was acquired in the first place. You know, SANDF needs land, you know, for training, for testing its own, you know, prime mission equipment, and also land that is cleared so that it provides this no man's land type of, that's no man's land that you have actually spoken about. So if we can get that information so that we can get a picture, and then the audit of land along the border. I recall that when we visited the borders, we were told that you know, in some cases they have to go through private land. I think the general mentioned it even today, to access you know, certain areas, and that they have to keep gates, you know, to the private land, and if we can get just that audit, it's supposed to be a no man's land, and what is the situation currently, and what are you propose that we do with it? Do we leave it like that, or we simply make a call to government to say, look, it's untenable that you'll have this settlement in what is considered a no man's land, because it interferes with the work of the Defence Force, and when it comes to executing its mandate. And then thirdly, the issue of the fence. I don't know where this is at now. You recall that we visited the fence, and about 70% of it was down. It was a big issue. It has died down, but it remains an issue for the Defence Force. But because for as long as the fence is down, you know, it compounds compounds your problem of the Defence Force. Maybe we also need to revisit that. Where is it at? What are the discussions? And if we are replacing it, when is it going to be replaced? And so on and so forth, so that we don't just leave it like that, as if we are the media. You know, jump it up whilst it's still hot. As soon as it gets cold, we leave it. It remains a problem. It was a problem then, it remains a problem even now. And there's a point that you are making. I wish that you come back to us, SANDF, maybe with this thing that you have just presented, and what we have and what we want. It's true that you have capability that you need to bring back into full operation. That must constitute what you have, and how much it will take to bring it back into full operation. Versus what you need to have is, in terms of closing two gaps, is the gap now at the time when you bring all the capability into full operation. What must it take? What the resources you need that need to be ring-fenced to bring that capability back into operation? That's the first space we need to close, because the capability is there. It's just that it's not serviceable. So we need to close that capability. And then the second gap is from when you have all the capability back into operation, and the ideal situation, you know, and how much will it take us to get there? What do we need to get there? And so that our discussion is at two fronts. And the first one, that we look at what we have to restore it, and then the second one, to look into the future, taking into account the assessment that we have done. And I don't know, SANDF, like you're saying, with the capability being brought into operation, and where does it take us? How much do we still need to go to the full realization of the objective? So is that, I don't know how long will it take you to crunch the numbers and produce a concrete plan, and that will look at all these issues that we have spoken about. But once you are still thinking, and maybe you can say it before I ask the DM to close the discussion.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think that what we will need to do is to go back to our arms of services, and that is largely your Navy, your Air Force, and then also talking to our colleagues in Joint Ops, and then also in the DI environment. Because then at least if we work all these together, we should be able to have a bird's eye view picture of what we have institutionally for the whole department. And then what is it that it is possible to do with what we have, and what is it that we need to do to augment? And if there are those that need to be repaired, we should be able to do that. I'm unfortunately not in a position to give you a commitment in terms of the date, but what we can do is to go to those structures, report back to them, and then ask them to give us an indication when they think that could be ready.
Okay, no, it's fine. Thank you very much. We'll bring this item back on the agenda sometime next year, maybe after 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, depending on the schedule for next year. DM, over to you.
Chairperson and honorable members of the Joint Standing co-chairs, of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense.
If your line it will not be disturbed, I would recommend you switch on the video, DM. My apologies.
Yes, Chair, I've tried earlier on to switch on my camera.
Oh, okay.
So it just shows a very blunt.
Oh, it
picture.
was you. I saw this. Yes. No, it's fine. You may switch it off.
My camera is not coming on. Someone has been in the past is helping me to log in, and I don't know what they have touched, which has affected the camera. I'll try and sort it out. Okay.
No. So that's understandable, DM. Okay, you may continue, sir.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I think the discussion this evening of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense was a valuable exchange to the department with respect to the things we must
Colleagues, have we lost the Deputy Minister?
I think so, Chair, is also not audible from where we
Oh, I see.
Probably.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think it means that we've all lost him. DM, it looks as though the system has kicked him out. Is he coming back, colleagues? Okay, looks as though we've lost him. DM, have we? I think we have. No, Shelembe, you are not DM as yet.
But I can assist in his abstention.
I don't know. It looks as though we've lost him.
I know Shelembe can assist, but not today.
Oh yes, yes.
Unfortunately, he's not even a shadow minister.
Oh, you know.
Meow.
No,
Thabo.
Yes, Nandipa. Yes, Nandipa.
I have just admitted him again, Chair. He has logged in using his iPhone.
Oh, I see.
I just admitted someone who said iPhone Tabang. So I think it's him, Chair.
I suppose so. DM? I don't see the iPhone Tabang.
I can see it, Chair. It's right at the bottom, but it doesn't have the
at the
microphone
bottom.
icon.
Yes.
It doesn't have the microphone icon, so it means I think he's struggling for us to hear him. Yes.
And yes.
And unfortunately, Chair, I think that I don't see any of his staffers online here because I was just trying to reach them to check whether he's able to come back.
I see. Oh yes, but he maybe someone must call him on the side.
No, he will never come back.
Will never come back.
He will never.
It's true that he is on, but we don't see the micro. What you call that mic sign there, indicating that he has joined fully.
No, thanks for going, Chair. He will never come back.
He'll never come back.
There, Chair, he does have now the microphone icon.
No, there is. No, you're back at DM. No, okay, it's fine. You may continue, sir.
I'm terribly sorry, Chair. I don't know at what point I lost connectivity on my side. I'm now back, but I'm using my phone because through my laptop, I'm not succeeding. I'm sorry, my apology for that. I was just saying, Chair, as we close the meeting, to say that the budget for border security management, which the Chair was referring to over the MTEF period, is evidently budgets that were projected on the basis of the serviceable assets that the different arms of service that participate in the border security management had. The assets were still serviceable at the time. It is the capacity that was there around 2018. But as we all know, that capacity has since deteriorated because of the unavailability of budgets to maintain some of that prime equipment. So that I think would be the context in which those figures should be understood. And of course, to say that they were budgets which were in reference to what we were able to do through the Navy, what we were able to do through the Air Force, and the same can be said about the landward force, the Army. But not a budget that was necessarily also including what we need for our border management to be comprehensive and to be properly managed. The gaps that are there were not addressed by those figures that we see in those documents. For instance, in relation to maritime domain awareness system, to have radar systems that, wall to wall covers the coast, that was not, budgeted for. Similarly, in relation to, the radar system for land, air space, surveillance, those were not there. And the same can be said in relation to the technologies we need for the land border, line, management. So it is clear that even with the budgets at the level where we are able to regain the serviceability of this prime equipment, you will still need additional money to have infrastructure to manage our border security the way it should be done. And as you have correctly said, and the SANDF made this point that when we talk about our border security of the country, we are talking about ensuring that we defend the territorial integrity of the country and the inviolability of its borders. And it covers all the domains, including cyber this time around. So those would be the, from a financial point, the challenge that we must be alive to. I wanted to say, Chair, that a point has been raised clearly showing the interest of the committee, rightfully so, to establish the status quo in relation to the technologies that we have deployed for border security management and the technologies we are in the process of acquiring. If the committee is agreeable, I had hinted to the department that it may be necessary that the Joint Standing Committee on Defense be favored with a presentation later, as you were proposing possibly early next year, with a presentation that would, in a closed meeting, share with the Joint Standing Committee on Defense the projects that are afoot for the acquisition of technologies that must be deployed for border management, and of course, indicating the budgets that are dedicated for each of those projects out of the 85 million that is now going back to be used for this purpose, indicating the timelines as well, as to at what point is this system going to be delivered, who is delivering it, the contracted company delivering it for us, and how long is that going to take? And of course, to give also a very clear picture of how the integration of these technologies is going to be worked out in order to give us one system that is comprehensive. The point about the BMA and the responsibility of the South African National Defence Force has been explained. I just want to add by saying that I hope the honorable members in the questions they were asking to establish what is it that the BMA is going to be taking over, which the South African National Defence Force was doing and will now be handing over. What is the transition arrangement and stuff like that, that you now have clarity that the borderline security
the inviolability of South Africa's borders, the SANDF is not sharing that responsibility with anyone. The responsibility to make sure that the country's sovereignty is inviolable is what the Defense Force is pleading to Cabinet and to the broad public, the political leadership of the country, to say, we can't complain about porous borders if we do not have money for the infrastructure and the systems that we are talking about. The systems that we are talking about, whether you're talking cyber, whether we are talking maritime, coastal lines, security, whether we are talking air security, the Border Management Authority, guards, do not have the competency to come into that space. And it would be wrong to give the public an impression that the Border Management Authority guards are coming in to take care of that function. The last point, Chair, is to say that, well, the Honorable Member Murray has raised one question, I think, about 3 times in different ways, but is speaking to the same thing. We need to have an appreciation of the extent of border coverage that is provided by the 15 companies that we have deployed. And to do so, we've got to just simply zoom on its slide number 7, where the area of operations of the different companies are provided. They give you the different, that slide gives you the different sectors